So good evening, everybody. My name is Dr. Tushar Devras, and I am the Chairman and Managing Director of Astute Counseling Academy. And let me welcome Dr. Donald Martin and Miss Deborah to this webinar. And as we have been communicating to all of you, we will be having a series of webinars on different topics on undergraduate and graduate degree programs in United States, what it takes to really get into the premier universities in United States, how we should be really preparing for the profile building activities. And that is how we have launched the International Career Mentoring Program also. And we will be running this program along with Dr. Donald Martin. And we would like to see the as many students can take benefit out of this program. So in this series, we will be continuously maybe 2 or 3 webinars in a month. We will be covering different topics. Now, today we are talking about earning an undergraduate degree in United States, what it takes to undergraduate, what we call a bachelor's degree here in India, what it requires. So we'll be taking even some part of it, the essay part of it, even the admission process, we will be talking scholarships, we will be talking about it. So many such aspects which will be covered in terms of that. Dr. Donald Martin is one of the most reputed academician. He was the former dean of admissions and dean of students at Columbia University. You may be knowing this is Ivy League University, and the University of Chicago Booth School of Business. Now the US News has ranked that as a #1 business school. Northwestern University, Wheaton College, a great exposure into the as a dean of admissions and dean of students for many years, and he has almost during the 1980 to 2008 more than 125,000 application he himself has been evaluated and given the decision part of it. So he was in the process. He knows in and out of the American education system. He knows what it takes to get into the premier institutions. And that is why this mentoring program, what we are running, we will be at as early as 9th and 10th standard students. We would like to join us so that 2 or 3 years time, we will be really doing lot of activities, lot of projects and all into that. He since 2008 he has been independently working as a consultant with students, parents over 6 continents, 50 countries. He is a columnist. He has written lot of articles. You may go to even US news site, World Report magazine. He's constantly on the speaking tour to different universities worldwide. Many conferences he has presented into that, and he has written an excellent book onto the graduate study. You should read that. If anybody would like to have a copy of that book, we will be freely courier that copy to you wherever you are there. And we are really fortunate that Dr. Donald Martin and our associates is there for very long now. We have been many years we have been working together for the benefit of the students. And as you know, Astute always works on the merits part of it. So we don't have any university tie-ups. We don't accept a single paisa commission from any university. It's purely merit-based applications goes to the university. So really making a great application is going to be very critical. So I'm really very happy we are starting first such seminar onto undergraduate admissions part of it. With this initial words, I request Dr. Donald Martin to really take this, and I hope every student will be highly beneficial. Please, if you have any questions, you can start typing in question and answer tab. You can see a question and answer tab. Please don't put it on the chat. Put it on the questions answer tab, so that at the end of the presentation, I can go through one by one question, and then Dr. Donald Martin can answer those questions into that. We have, sir, doctors, we have many students in a schools also joining from a single room. So there are multiple students also which will be taking benefit of today's session. So with this words, I request Dr. Donald Martin to take this forward.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Dioris, for that very kind introduction. And thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to make this presentation for the Astute Counseling Academy. I am delighted to be with all of you today, and I want to thank you for taking the time to join me. As Dr. Dioris indicated, it has been my pleasure to work with him almost 10 years now. And I don't always accept every invitation I am given to work with another organization. One of the things that is paramount to me when I do make that decision is the integrity and the honesty and the correct way of doing things that the organization undertakes. And I'm sure you already know this, and Dr. Dioris did not know I was going to say this today, but this organization, the Astute Counseling Academy, is outstanding. And any of you who have the privilege to work with Dr. Dioris and his team really are getting an incredible benefit. My respect for Dr. Dioris has only grown over the years, and I am honored and humbled and delighted that he invited me to assist with this new undergraduate mentoring program. And I'm just delighted to be here. You may have seen my colleague, Ms. Deborah Zakarian, who was on the screen earlier. She has now gone off the screen, but I do want to just mention that you'll get to know Deborah a little bit better as we go through these webinars. She will probably be assisting me in doing some of them down the road. She is a phenomenal education expert, has worked with me in the past, and I'm delighted to have her back again helping out with this undergraduate program that we're going to be launching. And as Tushar indicated, we will be doing another series of webinars, 9 more after this one, specifically devoted to the undergraduate application process and delving into some of the main areas of this application process much more deeply. So I hope you will consider joining us as we make those available. We are just finalizing the dates, and we will get them to you as soon as we can. But once again, welcome to this first webinar. Let's get to what we're going to talk about today. Well, I'm going to do this in a fairly short period of time because my favorite part of any webinar that I give are the questions. I love questions. So Dr. Dioris invited you to put your questions in the Q&A box here on the panel, on the Zoom call that we're doing. If you have any questions as I go through my presentation, please write them down. There are no bad questions. There are no dumb questions. Every question is a good one. And if you have a question, I'll do my best to try and answer it for you. So as we go through, please don't hesitate to write those questions down. What we're going to cover today are these items that you see here on your screen. There are certain myths about undergraduate study in the US that I would like to start off with, just 3 of them that I'd like to discuss. Then I want to talk about the biggest mistake prospective students, this is at the undergraduate and the graduate level, both. Every year, the biggest mistake prospective students make. If you don't take anything else away from what I say today, I hope you will keep this in mind as you make your plans for undergraduate study. And by the way, those of you who are listening to this webinar, who are planning to apply this fall to begin your undergraduate study in the fall of 2023, all of what I'm going to say is still applicable for you. It's not too late. So, but please keep in mind this particular point about the biggest mistake you can make. Then I want to talk about a few suggestions of how you can plan ahead and really make sure you are submitting applications to the best options for you. This is, after all, your educational journey. It's not your parents. It's not your guidance counselor. It's not Astute. It isn't me. Yes, we can be there to offer input and guidance, but at the end of the day, this is about your education. And you need to be very sure that you are planning ahead so that you increase your chances of finding that best option, that 1 or 2 programs that would be so great for you to be part of. And that's how you get there, is by planning ahead. So we're going to talk about that. Then I'm going to talk about 7 ways to get positively noticed as an applicant. and what I call 7 deadly sins. These are things you don't want to do, even though it may not be intentional. You still do not want to do this, or your chances of admission will go down. I'm going to talk briefly about essays and recommendations, academics and test scores, and then, of course, something that is very important, even at this stage, before any of you have submitted an application yet, I want to talk about what happens if instead of being admitted, you are placed on a waiting list or would be denied. What do you do in those cases? So this is what we might call a general overview of studying a graduate study in the United States and some initial ideas of things to be thinking about at whatever point you are, 9th standard, 10th standard, 11th standard, or you're getting ready to graduate next year and you're going to apply this fall. So with that in mind, let's get started with our first point. What are some major myths about undergraduate study? By that, I mean, what are some beliefs that some students have about their opportunity to study in the United States that may not be accurate, but they have these as very strong beliefs? The first one, and there are 3 of these, I apologize, not 4, but there are 3 of them. And what is the first one? Well, oftentimes applicants are concerned that their high school grades, their academic record, is not strong enough. They're very concerned about this, and they believe that this will put them at a disadvantage. Now, depending on what that looks like, yes, there may be some explaining that you will be required to do about your academic record. Let's say, for instance, that in the 9th standard or 10th standard, you did not do as well as you did after that. For closer to the time that you graduated, you did much better. That is something you want to let the admissions committee know about. Not every applicant who gets in, even to an Ivy League institution, gets in with a straight A average every time. There may be some what we would call extenuating circumstances. There may be something that contributed. Some students go through a very tragic event in their high school or their 9th standard, 10th standard, 11th standard. They may lose a loved one. They may be involved in an accident of some kind. They may sustain serious injuries. Something happens to them that causes their grades to be affected for a period of time. That's something that you can definitely address in your application. That's one of the things I've helped many of my applicants to do, is to successfully address, not make excuses now, but provide an explanation of what you think may have contributed to your grades not being quite as high as you might want them to be. So don't let your academic record unduly concern you regarding your chances of getting in. There are a wide range of grades that are with applicants who end up getting admitted to some very fine institutions. So I would say that while this may be a concern and it's understandable, I would also suggest I don't think you need to be overly concerned about this, and we would be able to help you to address it should we have the privilege to work with you one-on-one in the coming days and months. Okay, the second myth. This is a big one. Many applicants have a feeling and a belief that it is only worth their while to come to the United States to study if they can get into a top-ranked program, like an Ivy League program. Many students believe if they don't get into Columbia or the University of Pennsylvania or Princeton or whichever one it is, if they don't get into one of those top schools, that it's not worth it or their education is not good enough. I have been working in this field of higher education, as Dr. Dioris mentioned when he introduced me. For 28 years, I served as a dean of admissions at 4 different institutions over that time. And in the last 15 years, I've been working with individual clients and their parents in the application process. And I can honestly tell you that while maybe attending a higher ranked program initially opens a few more doors, at the end of the day, your success in life is not dependent on what particular rank the institution you attended had. It just doesn't. I don't have time to go into all of this now. If any of you have any questions about this, you are more than welcome to ask at the Q&A at the end of the presentation, or we can do another workshop on it if it's something that you really have questions about. But the most important thing, as we're going to see further down in our presentation, is that you find the best school. When you think about it, there are 3,000 to 4,000 accredited undergraduate institutions in the United States. Did you hear that? 3,000 to 4,000. So it doesn't make sense that there would be only 5 or 10 that are worth your time. I can think of 100 to 200 at least, if not more, outstanding undergraduate institutions. And unfortunately, most rankings only go to the top 25 or the top 50. They don't mention the rest of these, but they're outstanding programs. So please do not yield to the belief that you must attend a top 10 program or all hope is lost. That is truly a myth. It is simply not true. Okay, the third one. Colleges and universities in the US have an unending supply of scholarships. Well, they do have scholarships, but some applicants seem to have a misguided belief that if they get into any university in the United States, they're also going to receive thousands and thousands of dollars of scholarship help. That is typically not the case. There are scholarships available, and there are scholarships available for international students, including students from India. By the way, the perception about applicants from India on the part of US deans of admissions is very high. Indian students perform exceptionally well at the undergraduate and graduate level in the United States. This was the case throughout my 28 years of full-time when I was evaluating those 125,000 applications. Many of them were from students from India, and they do beautifully. They do very well. They're very motivated. They're very intelligent. They're very hardworking. They are excellent students. And so it stands to reason that if you have a very good application, a competitive application, you get admitted, you may very well receive some scholarship help. But please do not be assuming that if you get in, you will automatically receive a free ride or they will pay for everything. That is most likely not the case. There's a greater chance of getting increased scholarship help at the graduate level as a master's or doctoral student. But at the undergraduate level, it's not a free ride. They don't provide help with everything, but they will most likely offer some scholarships. And as an incoming student from India, you would qualify for some of those based on how they evaluate your application. Okay, that's the first area that I wanted to cover. Now we're going to get to the most important part of my webinar today. What do you think is the biggest mistake prospective college students make every year? I'm going to give you a moment to just think about this. If I were to ask you, what is it? What do you think is the very biggest mistake you could ever make? By the way, there are many of them, and we're going to see that when we talk about the 7 deadly sins for applicants. But this one stands above all of them. In the 42 years that I've been doing the work that I've been doing, this has been a consistent mistake throughout that entire time. So I hope you have a pen or pencil ready to write this down. What is the biggest mistake you can make as a prospective college student? Here it is. Not doing adequate research when? Before you apply. That is the biggest. Every year, applicants make this mistake. They do not take the time to really delve into researching the institutions that they are thinking about. What do they do instead? Usually, they rely on 2 things. First, word of mouth. Somebody else went there. Someone else thinks that's a great school. Maybe your parents think this is where you should go. A guidance counselor really is pushing you to think about this program. The second is rankings. How highly ranked is this program? And for many applicants, that's where their preparation, their research stops. They don't go any further. They don't look at anything else. They just listen to someone else and look at the rankings, and that's how they make up their mind. I believe that is extremely dangerous, extremely dangerous. You need to plan ahead in a much more organized and deliberate way before you submit your applications. So once again, what is the biggest mistake? This is something you want to avoid. You want to, your biggest mistake is not doing adequate research. So what do you want to do? You want to do adequate research, of course. You want to plan ahead so that you are in a much more informed position when you select those institutions to which you're going to apply. So how do you do that? Well, here is a couple of suggestions for you. First of all, remember, this is about finding the best match. I probably should have said for whom? For you. This is about your educational path and yours alone. You're the one who's going to come to the United States. You're the one who's going to be in this program for 4 years. You're the one going to classes, interacting with classmates, getting involved in extracurricular activities, trying to decide what your major will be, or maybe changing majors. This is on you. So it stands to reason that in order to not make the mistake of only choosing schools because of word of mouth or rankings, what can you do? First of all, in my experience and in my strong opinion, you should start out with at least 10 to 15 options. You don't start out with 2 or 1. You start out, we have a saying in the United States, you spread the net wide. When somebody's going fishing, you spread the net wide to get as many fish as you can. Well, same thing, spread the net wide. You want several options here. You're not going to apply to all of these, but you want to start off with a larger number of possibilities. And then I suggest, now you may do this a number of ways, but one way to try and keep all of the information you're gathering about these options together is to create a spreadsheet and then find out as much as possible about each option. On that spreadsheet, you may want to compare class size. What is the faculty to student ratio? How much financial aid do they offer? What do the students have to say? This is something many applicants don't do, is if you can, you should contact the admissions office and ask them if they can provide you with the name of 1 or 2 students that you might reach out to, that you could ask about their experience at this institution, especially when you're living in India and you don't have an opportunity to visit the campus, most likely. You don't have that kind of proximity to these institutions. So you are left with trying to find out what you can. One of the best ways is to talk with current students. There may be other things, the location of the school. What do the facilities look like? Would I be living on campus for my entire 4 years, or would I have to live on campus for 1 year and then find my own housing? Do you know all the things? What kind of health insurance do they offer? All kinds of things that might be of interest to you. You want to write those down on that spreadsheet and then fill them in for each option. I guarantee you, many of you, if you do this, I guarantee by the time you would complete this type of a process, your list of priorities will most likely change. I've seen this countless times where applicants have followed my advice on this. They've created a spreadsheet. They've done their research. They've compared many options. And the number 1 school that they thought that was going to be number 1 when they started out is no longer their number 1 choice. Some other schools have moved ahead of that option simply because they took the time to do some research and created a spreadsheet or some way organized information about these options. Please take the time. Again, Do not rely solely on those two things. Maybe you want to include them as part of your spreadsheet, but they should not be the only way that you find out about these schools. Now, in addition to this, make sure that you are preparing for standardized tests like the ACT, the SAT. If the TOEFL is required of you, you need to be preparing for those. And I believe the Astute Academy would be very, very helpful in guiding you if you need that kind of guidance on how to do that. You should start doing some practicing for your personal statement. This is very important. Many of you will use what's called the Common Application for your undergraduate applications. You'll submit one primary essay for that Common Application, and then that will be sent to all of the institutions you're thinking about who accept that application. Some of them may get back to you then and ask for supplemental essays, but you should at least begin to start thinking about the application essay and take a look at the Common Application. Log on and find out what it is they're going to ask you to talk about in your essay so that you're not scrambling to do this 1 month before you apply. You want to have some time to, and those of you that are, as I said, who are planning to submit your applications yet this fall for fall of 2023 to start next year, you have time to do this. So begin writing that personal statement. Make sure you know who it is that's going to recommend you and that that person or persons will be strong recommenders. There's a whole, we're going to talk about this in one of our webinars. We're going to talk about all of this. Standardized tests, essay preparation, recommendations, all of this stuff we're going to talk about in future webinars. But for today, just remember, you want to begin to think about individuals you believe will provide you. Do you know recommendation letters can make a huge difference in an application? They're often not thought very much about. But in my experience looking at applications, over half of the time, over 50% of that 120, that's over 50,000 times, the letters of recommendation I looked at were meaningless. They did not help me at all. They didn't, the person clearly didn't either know the applicant very well or didn't follow the directions we gave them. And consequently, that hurt the applicant. This is a critical part of the application. So make sure that you keep track of who it is you want to recommend you, and that you, and we'll talk about this, as I said, in a future webinar. Lastly, just make sure you keep track of deadlines. You do not want to be rushing. You don't want to be waiting till 24 hours beforehand and then scrambling to make sure everything is ready. That is the biggest way to make mistakes. And admissions committees, especially at the more top programs, get lots of applications. And if your application is riddled with mistakes, you're going to immediately hurt your chances of being admitted. All right. Now, before I move to the 7 ways to be positively noticed and the 7 deadly sins for applicants, I want you to know, I hope you're thinking about some questions you would like to ask me. I hope you're going to write them in the Q&A box, because I'm going to be finished in about 20 minutes. I'm not speaking for a full hour. I want to leave time for questions. Anything you want to know is good. As I said earlier, no bad questions, no dumb questions. We will not say your name or anything like that. Dr. Dioris will just ask the question and I'll do my best to answer it. So please, please feel free to put some questions in that box. I'm hoping I'll have lots of questions to answer when I conclude my remarks. Okay, now, how do you get positively noticed as an applicant? What are some things you can do to get positively noticed? And if you'll give me 1 minute, I'm just going to have a drink of water here. Of course, I wish I didn't have to say this. You would think folks would get it, but oftentimes they don't. Please follow directions. Whatever they ask you to do, please do that. And make sure that you know what they're wanting from you. Do not argue with them. Do not think, well, what in the world? Why did they ask that question? That makes no sense to me. That at this point, that isn't what you want to be doing. You want to be following whatever direction. Now, if you have a question about something, of course you can ask, but ask the admissions office. That doesn't, and some students are afraid to do that. No. That lets the admissions office know that you are taking what they're asking you to do seriously. You want to get it right. That's a plus. That's why it's in the 7 ways to get positively noticed. If you have questions, don't make assumptions about what you've been asked to do. If you don't understand something, ask. It will not hurt you. Rather, it will help you. Number 2, as we've already said, please make sure you use good recommenders. I hope you'll join us for the webinar where we're going to talk about this more in depth. This is a critical part of your application. Number 3, you can be reasonably creative if you wish. Now, why do I put this in here? Well, some applicants, be they from the United States or from outside the United States, they will do some things that they think are going to help them stand out, but actually don't. I'll give you some pretty strange examples, but these have all happened in my time as an admissions dean. Are you ready? One of our applicants sent a mirror in the mail. It was in a box. When I opened it up, there was a mirror in there, and underneath it said, "Here's hoping I'll be looking at you next fall." Now, that was creative, but that was just, a little bit over the top. I've received candy. People have would send boxes of candy. People would send flowers. On Valentine's Day, I got 6 red roses from an applicant one time, or we did, the admissions office, and it said, "You are the one for me. I know I'm the one for you. Here's hoping we will join together." It was cute, but it didn't help. If you want to be a little creative in your essay and maybe do something there, provided you get some input on it from someone who can guide you, that's okay. But you just want to be careful that you don't go too far. That's all we're saying. Number 4, smile. Let's say you end up having a Zoom or FaceTime or WhatsApp or whatever it might be, whatever the connection means would be. You get together with the admissions office. They have an admissions event virtually that you participate in or something. I don't mean that you just do this the whole time. That obviously is very fake, but you want to be a bit upbeat. You want to show them that you're glad you're there. So you want to smile on occasion. When you're talking with them, you want to let them know that you're there, that you have some energy around this, instead of looking like this. Of course, it makes a big difference. And if they're looking at you, maybe this is the first time they're meeting you. That first impression can be a more positive one if you simply smile. You might be nervous, but that it does help. Ask good questions. What do I mean by this? Well, here's 2 questions you never, ever want to ask an admissions office. Number 1, what are your application deadlines? That's plastered all over the website. You never want to ask that. Or, do you offer financial aid? Of course they do. That is not a question. You want to ask some questions. Maybe you've been looking at a particular student organization or a particular major or some sort of overseas study opportunity that this particular institution offers. And you've read everything you can, but you have some more questions. That's the kind of question. That shows you've been doing what? Your research. Yes, it shows you've been doing good research and that you have some very good questions. That helps you look better. It helps you stand out. Many applicants don't take the time to do that. So make sure if you're going to ask that you've done some research to help you ask good questions. Number 6, keep your cool no matter what happens. Sometimes admissions offices make mistakes. They may not have something that you sent them. Maybe they're missing a recommendation letter for some reason. Something is wrong, and you get a message telling you, we need this from you in order to have your application complete. Many applicants get very upset about this. They start yelling sometimes at the admissions committee. This is not the time to do that in any way. What do you want to do? You want to thank them for telling you, and you want to do whatever it is they are. If they're missing something, don't yell at them. Don't say to them, "Oh, I sent that. What's wrong with?" I've had applicants do this. They've said to me on the phone, "What's wrong with your staff? They are very incompetent. They don't know what they're doing." Oh, no. That immediately causes your credibility and your desirability to go down, not up. If something goes wrong, no, you won't like it, but this gives you a chance to show them what you're made of, that you can handle a bit of a surprise or something that you might have to do that you didn't think you would have to do. So keep your cool. And lastly, let them know you're interested in your essay for your common application, or if they send you supplemental essays, or you happen to speak with them and you send a thank you message afterward. You can always you don't have to go overboard, but there's nothing wrong with letting them know, I've become even more interested in this institution after this event, or after this conversation, or after what I read about this part of the program, whatever it may be. Let them know within reason that you are interested. Now, we're going to flip this over. What are the ways you don't want to be noticed? These are 7 deadly sins. First of all, dishonesty. Some applicants are tempted to embellish their applications not because they're bad people, but because I think they're a little nervous that they're not going to be as competitive as some other applicants. So they think that if their GPA in high school is a 3.25, they change it to 3.52, hoping nobody will notice. Well, I'm here to tell you that we most often do notice. We will figure that out. And if that happens, you're automatically denied. And you wouldn't have had to do that. And being tempted to embellish an application doesn't make you a bad person at all. But acting on that is something you don't want to do. Do not yield to the temptation to be dishonest. Number 2, do not reach out to the admissions office all the time. You most likely won't have occasion to do this very much anyway, but just be careful that you're not contacting them every week or every other week. It gets to be too much, and you could end up hurting yourself. They may think, boy, this person is really coming on too strong here. It isn't helping them. It's hurting them. Number 3, what did I say earlier? Not following directions. When I was a dean of admissions at Columbia, University of Chicago, Northwestern, Wheaton, wherever I was, if an applicant could not follow simple directions and didn't take the time to ask us if they didn't understand one of them, and they submitted an application that wasn't right, they were denied. I thought, if they can't do applications correctly, what's that going to say about all of the instructions they're going to need to follow when they get to our campus? So please follow directions. Number 4, rude or arrogant behavior. There's a big difference between confidence and arrogance. A big difference. Do you want to be confident of yourself? Sure. If you want to ask me more about what I mean by this, I'll be happy to share it with you. But for now, rude or arrogant behavior is just not tolerated. Once again, we had a system at the University of Chicago called the Orange Sheet System. What was that? If our staff, we went through and trained them on exactly how to do this. But if our staff had an extremely, extremely over-the-top positive interaction with an applicant, or conversely, had a horrible experience with an applicant, they filled out an orange sheet describing that interaction. That was placed in the applicant's file. That is the very first thing. If it was there, that's what I would see first when I opened that application. And you know what? If there was an orange sheet in that file that was negative, just one, that applicant was waitlisted at best. If there were 2 negative orange sheets, they were denied outright. I didn't look at the rest of the application. So please, you can be confident, but you need to be courteous. You do not want to demonstrate rudeness or arrogance. Number 5, sending the wrong information. Many applicants don't check their applications when, let's say, they're sending supplemental information to institutions that have requested it. Let's just say I live in Chicago. So let's say that someone's applied to the University of Chicago and to Northwestern both. And both institutions get back with them and say, we would like you to complete this additional supplemental information for your application. And the applicant switches it and sends the information for the University of Chicago to Northwestern and the information for Northwestern to the University of Chicago. You're going to be denied. that's just not it. Obviously, you didn't follow directions, and clearly you didn't take the time. Make sure that you send the right information and that to the best of your ability, your essays and the statements that you're writing have been proofed. Now, no one is perfect. There might be a typographical error that everybody misses. That's fine. We aren't expecting perfection, but we are expecting generally very strong applications by the time you push that submit button. Okay. Again, asking questions you can answer for yourself, a bad move. If you can find that information on their admissions website, then you don't ask about it. If you can't find it and you've really done your homework, that's when you ask. Finally, leaving something unaddressed or making excuses. Let's say, as we said at the beginning of the presentation, that your academic record is not what you would have wanted it to be, and you have some concerns about that. There are ways to address this without making excuses or sounding like, oh, I'm so, poor me, life is so sad. No, you don't want to do that, but you do want to address something. If you think the admissions committee may have a concern about something in your application, then you want to address it with them. All right, in our remaining minutes, we're going to go through some of these a little more quickly because we're going to be coming back. I promise you that with essays, recommendations, all of this, we're going to have a much more thorough webinar on these in plenty of time for those of you who might be applying even this fall. But for right now, very quick, answer the questions. Do not go off on a tangent. Whatever they ask you, be sure that you answer that question, and only that. Stick to the word limit. This is a way for you to show that you can follow directions. If they ask you for a 500 word to 750 word essay, that's what you want to give them. You can go over a little bit. You could have a 515 word essay. I wouldn't go much higher than that, but you don't have to be right on the mark, but you don't want to be way over. We had an applicant to Columbia. We asked them for a 750 word essay. They sent us a 50-page document. They were denied. They couldn't even follow that direction. If there's an optional essay that they want to ask you, is there anything else you'd like to tell us? Write that. There might be something else you've been burning to tell them that they weren't asking in any other part of the application, but they're giving you a chance to talk about it now. That's the place to do it. As we said, keep in touch with your recommenders before the deadline and make sure you thank them after the deadline for doing this for you and that you let them know where you are admitted and when you were admitted. That's very important to keep them in the loop as they took the time to do this. By the way, more questions seem to be coming in. I'm not sure if some of them are coming in the chat box, but we have some questions in the Q&A box, which is good to see. We still have time for a few more to come in, so keep them coming if you have more. All right, academics. If you need to explain your academic record, as I said, you can do that without making excuses about it. As I said earlier, spend time preparing to take your standardized test. Make sure you're ready to do that so you can do the best. Generally speaking, you don't want to take a test more than 3 times. Now, there could be certain situations where you are encouraged to do that for whatever reason, but by and large, the statistics have repeatedly and consistently shown that after 3 times, your scores are not going to change that much. So taking it over and over and over again could make you look a little desperate, actually. It could hurt you more than help you. If you take the test 3 times, you don't do as well as you hoped, you can talk about that in an optional essay or a personal statement. You can provide an explanation. You're looking at someone. I am not the best test taker. I never was. But that did not hinder me from getting into grad school and completing my PhD at Northwestern University, and I did very well. I didn't have very high test scores. So please do not, again, feel like you have to keep taking this test over and over and over again. It will hurt you, in my opinion, more than help you if you do that. All right, lastly, before we get to your questions, what happens if you are waitlisted or you are denied? The first thing I want to say is this. As a former dean of admissions myself, for 28 years, every fall, every maybe September or October, my dean, my vice president, my president, whoever I reported to, would meet with me and say, Don, we need you to bring in X number of students next year. Okay. I did not have any control over how many students were brought in. That wasn't up to me to decide. That was up to the administration. Furthermore, they often would say to me, we want you, let's just say they wanted me to bring in 1,000 students. Then they would say, okay, of that 1,000, this percentage should be men and this percentage women. This percentage should be minority and this percentage majority. This percentage international, this percentage within the United States. And then they gave me several parameters that I had to follow when I put that class together. And I happened to have the privilege to work at some institutions that are fairly competitive. And we would receive, for the University of Chicago Booth School of Business, we would receive 4,500 to 5,000 applications every year for an incoming class of 500 students. Most of those applicants were outstanding. We just couldn't admit them all. We couldn't take 5,000 students. Had I admitted them, I'd been fired on the spot. We could only bring in what I was told I was to bring in. So you have to remember, the higher the rank, the more prestigious, the more competitive an institution is, the less likely you're going to get admitted. It doesn't matter who you are. It's just that is the reality. So when this happens, if you're waitlisted or don't take it personally. This isn't about you. It isn't that they are doubting whether you will be a good student there. It's, we have X number of seats. This is the way we're supposed to fill them. That's what we have to do. If you are waitlisted, you can request feedback. Don't argue with it. And maybe they'll give you a chance to submit some additional information so that they might be willing to take another look. As I said, point number 3, many students falsely believe if they're waitlisted, that means they're going to be denied automatically. That is not true. If you're on a waiting list, that means they really want you there. If they didn't feel they could admit, they would have denied you. They're not going to try and play a game with you. They're not going to try to mislead you or drag you on and on. No, if you're waitlisted, they're interested. So don't take it personally, request feedback, act on that if you can. Do not argue with them. This is not the time. Again, you'll hurt yourself. You simply accept the feedback you've been given and act on it. Lastly, if you're denied, consider reapplying. Again, many applicants believe if they are denied the first time and they reapply, they're automatically going to be denied the second time. Absolutely, that's a myth. That is not true. The chances of admission on a reapplication actually go up, not down. They do. So consider reapplying. If this was your first choice, you want to wait and try again. I have worked with countless applicants who have reapplied, and 99% of them have been admitted the second time around. Okay, here we go. We are finished with our presentation. Thank you so much for staying with me and listening as we've gone through these points. I hope this information has been helpful and has whet your appetite a little bit for some of the additional webinars we're going to be offering with Dr. Dioris and the Astute Academy down the road. I see that Dr. Dioris is back on the camera. So I'm going to stop now because we still have about 10, 15 minutes here on our time. And it looks like, Tushar, we have some questions. So I'm going to turn it over to you to ask those questions.
Yeah, thank you very much. This was a really excellent session. And I think the students must have appreciated the depth in which the Dr. Donald Martin has addressed the points. And these are really the myths part of it, what you should do, what you should not do, has come from his experience as an admissions dean. So you should appreciate that part of it. You will not find this anywhere written on the website. You will not find this such type of crucial information anywhere in the internet. These are the information, such a valuable information that you should really be fortunate to getting from Dr. Donald Martin. So I'll just go through the questions now. One by one questions, I will read it that, and then I will request Dr. Donald Martin to So there is a student that says, I am a second year BS student, and if I want to start preparing for the USMLE from now onwards, what resources or books I should read? So I would request today's session is not about the medical post graduation part of it. We are having a separate seminars and webinars onto the USMLE part of it. We should and I will maybe separately, privately, I will answer this particular questions.
Great. That's great. Yes.
Yeah. I'm very much interested to hear from you systematic procedure to get into engineering in United States. How early preparation needs to start? What is the total expenses will be for the parents? So that is a really
That's a very good question.
Yeah.
In my opinion, you should prepare for your undergraduate education starting in the 9th standard. Ideally, you should be thinking about, if you're planning to go to college, and most all students in India do go on to their undergraduate education. That they have a very high percentage in that country. So you should be preparing to do this as early as the 9th standard. And if you're thinking about engineering, obviously, some of the courses you would want to consider would be in the STEM areas, the art, the science, the mathematics, physics, chemistry. Maybe there is an engineering course in your 9th or 10th or 11th standard that you would be able to take. Most of all, you want to try to do your best to get the best grades that you can. And in terms of where to study in the United States, there's a wealth of information that we would be able to help you to provide, or to provide for you, I should say, if you are looking for specific options, actual institutions that we can help with. As for expenses, typically every institution on their website does provide budget information about what the cost will be for 1 year, including tuition, room and board, transportation, books, health insurance. All those types of costs usually are spelled out right on the website. And certainly if someone is admitted, they then get a very, very detailed budget. But even before that, well before someone would be admitted, if you are interested in getting information on pricing, you should be able to find that right on the individual institutional website. That was a great question.
Thank you. I would also request some of the students are typing questions on the chat box. I request them to just copy paste that into the question and answer tab. So that will be easier for us to answer the question. So there is another question from the same gentleman. Are you sharing any sample papers if provide a clearer idea of what to create? Yeah, so we will be taking a lot of webinars in future. We will be sharing that. Yeah, Don, yes.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you said it, Tushar. I do want to, now I try to be careful not to share a complete example ever of an essay, because you need to be able to write your own essay first. Part of the work that we've done with Astute that I believe has been very successful is that we do evaluate essays. We do provide information once an essay is written. What I will be doing in future webinars is giving you very, very specific guidelines on how to create that essay. And it's worked very well with my clients and with my students. They have followed this and done very, very well. So yes, we will be giving you much more in-depth information on your essays or on writing your resume. If you're asked to do a resume, whatever you're asked to submit, we will be willing to help you to do that. And we'll be giving more information about that down the road. Thanks for asking.
Another question, please, can you tell the tuition fees of computer science course and which university is the best?
Yes, once again, if we are working with someone on occasion, we have been asked to actually prepare a list of institutions that they might consider for their undergraduate, graduate, medical school education. We can do that. And again, the cost of attending, whether it's at the undergraduate or at the graduate level, either one, the cost of attendance, obviously, that's a very important consideration. And those costs are almost always provided. And if they aren't, that's a very good question you can ask the admission. You can send an email to the admissions office and say, I have been trying to locate the cost information for your program. Have I missed it? Or if it's not on the website, is there something you could send to me? That would be a very, very good way of letting them know that you've done some research and you're trying to find out more about the program.
Another question, which undergraduate course is good in United States with good earning?
For good earning potential.
Which undergraduate course is good for the good earning? So the income
No.
part, the salaries.
This is, in other words, you're asking a very good question. And that is, if I take the time to do this and spend all this money to go to college, is there going to be a reward, a financial benefit? I would say yes. And I honestly don't know that I would say that there are programs where you're not going to have any financial benefit. Obviously, as we know, there are some fields where the income tends to be a little higher, and that would be business, law, and medicine, but or engineering, for instance. But there are many, many fields in the arts and the sciences, in education, in history, in psychology, many, where incomes are also very, very good. So once again, when you do your research, you could put on your spreadsheet, what is the earning potential if I go here? And on the career placement section of the website for that institution, they should have information about how many of their students got jobs by the time they graduated and some ideas about what their salaries were. That's something that's very important to take a look at. I'm very glad you asked that question.
Another question, my son received positive response from Purdue University for MS Mechanical Engineering, IUPUI. So this
Yes.
is an Indiana University, Purdue University combination in Indianapolis. And
Yes.
we'd like to know the quality of education and employment opportunities. Thanks and regards.
Did I understand, Tushar, this was this person's son who received this news?
Yeah, son is received a positive response from the
Okay.
Indiana University, Purdue University. So they have the joint collaborative programs.
Oh, yes.
In mechanical engineering.
Okay.
So would like to know the quality of education, how good is the institution and the employment opportunities.
Well, congratulations to your son. That is an incredible. Purdue is one of the best engineering schools in the United States. It's in the top 20. And sometimes it's in the top 15. It might be, the rankings fluctuate. But bottom line, Purdue is an outstanding, very highly regarded university in the United States. Their engineering program is excellent. I would say if he were to decide to take advantage of this opportunity, he is making a very wise choice. He will not go wrong.
Is there any higher education course available in Indian language like in Hindi? No, I don't know.
I don't believe so. That would be something I think that's a very good question. Whoever asked this, that might be something astute might be better able to address with you privately.
Yeah, so there are some universities having the language courses are there, and they run almost all international language courses in the universities. So there are few universities which definitely have the Hindi, but I don't have the names currently. But there are universities, even Sanskrit is there in some universities, and regular all Europeans, German and Italian and all, many courses are already there. Request again the students to really put the questions into the questions and answer tab, so that it will be easier to have this. Another question, there are 4 or 5 questions are there, but I'll take maybe one by one question. How to find best recommendation?
Great question. My suggestion would be that if you have a teacher in your school that you've come to know pretty well. And again, this would be more toward your toward the conclusion of your high school studies. You would want someone who's been working with you, teaching with you, perhaps in the last year or so, maybe the last 12 to 18 months. And you've gotten to know this teacher very well, or you have a career advisor or someone that is within your school. Maybe you've been doing an extracurricular activity like sports or debate, and you've worked with a faculty or advisor or a coach, someone who works, who is very familiar with you, who knows you, knows your abilities and talents, and can truly answer the questions they're going to be asked. That's where you would want to start. And again, we will go, I promise you, we will go into more detail about this. It's a great question. I'm glad you asked it. But my definition of a good recommender, I'll just say this now, is someone who knows you long enough and well enough to really write a strong letter for you.
How to be the best creative while applying?
How to be the most creative when you apply? Well, the most, I'm glad you asked this, because there's one thing I was going to say earlier and it slipped my mind. The best way to truly stand out above all as an applicant is two words: be yourself. Just be yourself. If you are not as creative a person, that's okay. Thousands of applicants get admitted every year who just followed the basic application instructions and they did just fine. You want to be yourself. If you have some ideas, if we would ever have the privilege of working with this particular student, and you have some questions about, how can I make this a little more creative, we'd be happy to chat with you about that. But bottom line, don't try to be someone you're not. A person that's well known in the United States, an author by the name of Oscar Wilde, said it best, and I quote, "Be yourself, everyone else is already taken." And that's something to keep in mind when you are working through your applications. There's only one of you. There's only one of you. So just be yourself.
Some guidelines on statement of purpose, how it can be a strong.
Very quickly, you need to address the questions that you're asked, first of all, head on. You don't answer things, you don't discuss things you weren't asked. You discuss what you've been asked as clearly, as honestly, as persuasively as you can. And that's where we come in at Astute. We can help you to prepare the application essays and I don't know how much Dr. Dioris wants to say about this, but my recollection is that we've had a very successful experience with students from Astute with whom we have helped with their statements of purpose, with their essays. We've had a very, very strong success rate with this. Deborah Zakarian, my colleague, and I, this is something we are very able and willing to help you with.
Yeah, we'll be actually addressing all these points in far more detail into the subsequent webinars, because it is not possible to cover in single webinar, because these itself, everything, even a statement of purpose and all these things are too complex part of it. And so maybe one or two more questions I'll take.
All right.
About how to choose the career and what point we are confused. We are most of the time at 9th standard, maybe confused how we should choose a career and relate with the course part of it.
I may defer to you, Tushar, to address this, because part of the outstanding work you do with Astute is helping students to think through some of their career choices. But let me just say this. As you are, and this is a great question, I applaud you for thinking about this. I think I may say something that could be surprising, but I don't think you need to be overly concerned about your career choice at the 9th standard. I think you could start thinking about some career options and doing some research on what that would look like. Let's say, for instance, that you would like to study, you're thinking, I should say, about a career in engineering. My suggestion would be that you do some searching on, put it into your internet browser. What would a career in engineering look like? Put it in there. You might be very surprised at the number of resources that would be available to you for this. And Tushar, I do believe Astute offers some guidance on this particular area that I think it would be great if they could hear from you about this too.
Yes. No, definitely. That is why we say ourselves as a career counselor. So career always comes first and then the course part of it. Do school visits matter for the admissions?
Yes and no. I say they certainly can help if you have an opportunity to visit campuses. There's no doubt about that. But not everyone has the time or the resources, especially if you live in India. You may not be able to come to the States and go to 10 or 15 campuses, let's say, to visit. If you can't do the visits, then you have two other options. One, every institution that I know of in the around the world offers what's called a virtual campus tour on their website. And these have become incredibly helpful and very, very useful. So you, at a minimum, I would strongly recommend that you take the virtual campus tour. And then secondly, many institutions are now offering virtual admissions events that you can log on and meet the admissions staff, perhaps meet some faculty, some students, and actually have an admissions exposure that way. So yes, it's great if you can visit the campus. If you can't, these admissions events and the taking the virtual campus tour would be extremely, very, very beneficial.
How important are extracurriculars? Is it more than the academics?
Great question. They are very important. I would not say that they are more important than academics, but this is what I will say. And this was my own experience as a dean of admissions evaluating undergraduate applications. There were times when an applicant maybe didn't have a straight A average. They didn't have, they weren't right kind of at the top in terms of their grades, but their extracurricular activities were extremely impressive. And that's where their recommendations came in very handy. There were recommenders who said, this student may not be straight A's in our high school right now, but they're going to go places. This is what they've accomplished here at this high school. Their extracurricular, their volunteer experience. By the way, if you've been involved in a long-term volunteer type of experience throughout your high school years, and there's a director or an overseer or a supervisor who's worked with you, that's someone else to think about for your letter of recommendation. So I would say these are both very important, the academic part and the non-academic part. Both of them can help offset each other and balance each other out. Great question.
I'm fall 2022 first year undergraduate applicant. I have received admits, I have few waiting lists and few rejections. At this stage, what are the things I need to be extra careful about?
Well, at this point, if I'm understanding correctly, you've applied for this fall. You've heard that some institutions were not able to offer admission, and you've been waitlisted at others.
And some admissions also.
And some admission.
Yes.
All right. Oh, I'm sorry, I missed that first. Well, congratulations on the admissions. That's wonderful. Yeah. So what I would say is, if some of the schools you're most interested in placed you on a waiting list, what would be most helpful to know is when you're going to hear a final decision, because you may have some deadlines from the schools you were admitted to put down your enrollment deposit and let them know where you're going to attend. So I would think the decision you would be facing would be, are of the schools to which I've been admitted, is one of those really one of my top choices? And have I been pleased with the way they've been communicating with me since I've been admitted? And am I thinking I'd like to go? Or are there some other schools I'd like to go to, but I'm waitlisted and I want to learn what the answer is from them? If this individual, Tushar, has more specific questions about and wants to talk with me about this situation one-on-one after this presentation, I would certainly be willing to do that.
Thank you. Thank you, Doctor.
You're welcome.
Does applying for scholarship hurt your chances of getting in?
Oh, that's a great question. Absolutely not. Oh my gosh, no. If you want to apply for scholarships, you absolutely should feel free to do that. The decision on admissions or on admission has nothing whatsoever to do with your financial need. They are completely separate. When I made decisions on applicants during those 28 years that I was an admissions dean, I had no idea what their financial situation was. That we did not even look at that until after the decision was made about whether they would be admitted or not. So if you want to apply for scholarships, oh yes, absolutely, I would encourage you to do so.
So there are something repetitive questions. I'll just skip that. So we are short of time and we need to finish.
Okay.
So the list of the university colleges, we also help Dr. Donald Martin based on the profile shortlist the universities. So 3 or 4 students have asked it. So we definitely will look at your profile, and we have one of the most successful shortlisting being done by Dr. Donald Martin. We are almost 100% success rate with that. What is the scope of pharmacy in United States?
What is the scope of pharmacy? Oh, incredible opportunities. In fact, this is an interesting story. We have a little grocery store in the building in which I live here. It's on the first floor. And the manager of that store and his wife are from India originally. And I actually helped their son who went to pharmacy school. He's now a practicing pharmacist here in the Chicago area. It's just as the medical school community and opportunities in the United States are vast, so is pharmacy. It's a very growing field here, and we can help with that if that would be of interest.
Yeah, my son has got admission in LLM program in Washington University, St. Louis. So you know about that?
Oh my word! Washington University in St. Louis is one of the top undergraduate and graduate schools in the United States. In fact, in some years, the competition to get in there has been heavier than to get into Harvard. Washington University is outstanding, whether it's law, business, medicine, undergraduate. They are a phenomenal institution. Congratulations to, I believe you said your son, congratulations to him. That's an outstanding program. Yes.
Yeah. So does the board of the school matters a lot? Means we have the central boards of education or the state boards of education. So from where he has done the high school diploma, whether that board matters a lot?
Not very much, in truth, truly, no. As I said earlier, there's a and the perception is true that the education system in India is highly regarded in the United States in terms of what students learn coming up through their elementary years, and then their different standards, 9th standard, so forth, 10th standard. You do not need to worry about that, truly. If your student has done well academically, has been involved outside of academics, prepares a strong application, there will not be some sort of a grading system about the different boards. I can assure you of that.
So thank you very much. I think most of the questions were of similar nature, and this was really the first and very, very exciting, and really we all are very privileged. Dr. Donald Martin is here and he has spared so much of time. I think we exceeded the time.
That's okay. That's
so okay. I'm really thankful for such a wonderful session. And we are looking forward to going into each and every part in far more details. We will be circulating in advance the dates part of it when we will be coming, and we hope, I think, this series of the webinars will eventually really benefit the students. And there are a lot of parents today also along with the students, and they ask the questions. So it
Wonderful.
shows really a great from the parents also. They are
That's
concerned
right.
about child's education. So thank you very much. Thanks for asking. So I will now closing the session. Again, thank you, Dr. Donald Martin, for really sparing such a wonderful session with all the students.